Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper, and today we have a guy who's been a teacher in our school system for 38 years, band director at Bennett Middle forever, before that Bennett High School, Gary Hammer. Welcome, Gary.
Well, thank you, Greg. I appreciate you inviting me to be on today.
Now, I thought about having you on because it's budget time. Budget time in Wycomico County means discussion about education funding. And you're one of the people who I think are very articulate when it comes to education funding.
Well, I appreciate that.
So what's going on in our county? Why do people have such an issue all the time with education funding?
Well, first off, I think in any county, education is definitely a subject that needs to be discussed. It reaches into every home, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, an aunt or uncle of a student in a school system within a county. You should have an interest in that, because students are our future. What we invest in them today is going to pay out in the future. So I think that does need to be a topic of discussion within any county. And when it comes to education funding, due to a variety of reasons, in most counties, this is the bulk of the budget.
Right.
So when you look at that being a large portion of a budget, taxpayers are going to have some concerns probably about that.
Now, you're the president of the Wycomico County Education Association, and I don't know if a lot of people know what that is, but it's not quite a union, but it's a group that represents the teachers. Talk about your role with that and talk about the WCEA.
I think the Wycomico County Education Association really is an association that has multiple tasks. Basically, we look at education issues not only locally, but nationally and at the state level, whether it be continuing education funding, whether it be supporting capital projects within a school district or the state for new schools or higher technology schools or even renovation of schools. And then, of course, at the local level with our own members, it's just making sure that they are represented. We represent them in bargaining, we represent them in disputes, we represent their interests within the community to try to make their job safe and secure and hopefully have them make a good living where they're at and stay part of the community.
But there's way more to the organization than just you all sitting around trying to figure out how the county can pay you guys more money.
Way more than that. If that was all my job, you know, it would be a lot easier to do. We kind of feel that we are the educational experts. I've said many years now, if you have an issue with your loading dock in your company, go ask the guys on the loading dock what's going on.
Right.
So one of my goals as the president of the association is to have us be a resource for really anybody that's researching educational issues. If they want to know what's wrong on the loading dock as far as education, we have that research and that knowledge. I feel like we are the voice of education, just like doctors would be the voice of the medical association or lawyers the voice of the bar association. So yes, we do offer services and we lobby for educational issues both at the national, state, and local level.
Now, there are 14,500 about students in Wycomico County. And I've always thought of that number because that's the exact number of seats in Cole Fieldhouse at the University of Maryland. So when I imagine all the kids that are in all the schools, that's how many kids there are, you know, a packed Cole Fieldhouse. How many teachers are there?
Well, I'd say about somewhere between 12 and 1,300 teachers.
Okay. And are they all members of the organization?
No, they are not.
And how does that go? Is it?
It's a voluntary membership. We hope, you know, we would love to have all the teachers involved. I mean, every individual has their own reasons of why they do belong and why they don't belong. We are definitely trying to get more teachers active within the association. We kind of have the same problem sometimes as educating the public, as educating our own members of why you need that voice.
Right.
That strong, unified voice pushing for educational issues that involve everybody in the community, including teachers, because they're part of that community also.
Right. What's the relationship with the WCA and the school board?
I think it's pretty good. I've really tried to reach out this year to the individual members of the school board. I assume you're talking about the civilian appointed Board of Ed. So I think I'd like to have a better working relationship with them, obviously. And I've expressed that to them. And I know the president of the school board has said he would like to meet with us and sit around and talk about issues and things that we can work together on.
Right.
So I'm excited about that.
One of the things you hear all the time are teachers who don't feel like they have the adequate supplies in the classroom and they have to use their own money for that. Does that really happen a lot?
I think teachers do use some of their own money just because sometimes it's more convenient. If it's a $5 purchase or a $10 purchase, sometimes to go through the process to get that can be arduous. I think the school board does its best to fund materials of instruction. Obviously, when you look at the budgeting process from the state and the county to education, we have to live within budget means. Sometimes that means in order for you to teach a certain lesson, you may have to go out and pick something up. But I think teachers are passionate about their jobs, and they've always been willing to do a little bit of that. I think when it gets to be excessive, then that's when it's an issue.
Yeah, I just feel like as an employer, you've got to provide your employees with certain things, and I just wonder if the teachers feel like that they're not getting all the resources they need.
Well, if you're talking about resources in general, I think there's always an improvement needed, whether it's in technology particularly. I know a lot of teachers at Bennett Miller are very excited about going to the new school. It's going to be very technologically advanced. At Bennett Middle, where I've spent 27 years of my career, I have a band room that has one electrical outlet. That's how the building was built. Back in 1964,
right.
the band room probably needed a record player,
right,
and maybe a film strip projector.
Right.
So obviously those things have gotten much more advanced, and kids today and technology changes probably weekly. And it's tough for a school system to keep up with those technological advances.
Right.
And we've put in some policies in place within the school board there that have helped with that. I know they are piloting a new cell phone policy that does allow some technology for classroom use. There's issues when you have kids with phones, on the other side, but I think we're trying to handle that and find a medium. So are there some things that schools need? Always. Are we working towards getting those met? Always. But as I always say, the biggest and most important app in a room and the biggest piece of technology in a room has got to be that classroom teacher.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because I know my life has absolutely been molded by certain teachers I had in all different areas of school. And I had some bad teachers, but I had way more good teachers, and I had some great teachers whose voices are still in my head every day.
And I think that's why people go into teaching. To address what you said, yeah, there's maybe some teachers out there that aren't quite as good as others. I always say this: somewhere in the United States is the absolute worst doctor in the world, and he has patients every day.
Right.
So there are things in place to, if you have a teacher that's not successful, to either help them become successful or eventually, not have them teach.
And I know even with myself, some of the teachers I thought were bad were probably good teachers for other kids. There was just something where I didn't connect somehow.
That is an excellent point.
Yeah.
And I agree with you on that. The perception is everything.
Right.
But I do agree with you
like my math
wholeheartedly.
teachers. I didn't like any of my math teachers.
Probably the subject area.
And they didn't like, and none of them liked me either, but that's a whole different thing. Yeah.
Well, my music teacher loved me, obviously, but my poor English teacher, we were not the best of friends.
Right.
But that's the challenges of teaching. But I think the majority of teachers out there are excellent teachers. It's got to be a passion more than a profession. It's a lot of hours more than what you get paid for. And that's why you go into it, because you love children, and primarily because, like yourself, you didn't become a math teacher, but
right.
You have a teacher, and I still have teachers that I remember, and they're the ones that influenced me into becoming a teacher. And I think 99% of the new teachers that come into our field are influenced that way to do so.
Right.
WCA offers a scholarship to each high school every year just for future teachers. So, and every time I sit down and talk to those students in their interview, it's about Mr. Johnson or Mrs. Smith.
Right.
just changed my life. And not only in their subject area, but sometimes literally in the direction they're going in their life path. So I think that's what teaching is about. And I think for whatever reason, the teaching profession in general over the last decade has really taken a beating. And I haven't seen the teachers within the buildings actually change all that much.
Right.
They're still caring people. So why we are now the enemy in some people's minds, I don't get. Because in the students' minds, in the parents' minds, most of them that I see and talk to and deal with, the kids love their teachers. Parents have confidence in their teachers. And for some reason, sometimes the media, I think with a lot of things, gets carried away
Right.
with.
Well, what I see, it's the people who aren't involved in the school system, who maybe had a bad experience in the school system 40, 50 years ago.
Correct.
And they're still angry at the changes, and they don't get the change. They don't get the new needs that exist.
Well, I think that actually probably goes all the way up to Washington, D.C. You know, they're making educational decisions based on when they were in school, and they're
Right.
probably my age or older, 60. Well, I can tell you, after teaching 38 years in the public school system, it changes every 5, 6, 7 years.
Right.
There's always something new, particularly, as we said, with technology and how you teach and what you teach with. And you just can't say, well, because I did, you know, my school was built in 1950 and it's still standing and they're using it. Well, you know, that's great.
Right.
But probably, like the kids at Bennett Middle, the technology they're being able to be exposed to is not the technology that the students at the new James M. Bennett High School is being exposed to.
Right.
The programs you can offer with that new building are much more diverse than we can offer in an older building.
Right.
So can you use them? Yes, you can. Does every teacher and does the Board of Ed try to make sure the students have the best opportunities they can have? For sure. But I think sometimes the dollar you save in your pocket on your tax money is not as great an investment as you can make giving $5 out of that pocket to invest in the community's future and those kids' welfare.
Right.
That's Gary Hammer's opinion.
Right.
But
Now, you talk about Bennett Middle, and it seemed like an obvious need to me that there needed to be a school, and whether they built it in the right place or not, I don't know. We'll learn about that as it goes
Correct.
on, I think. But I never realized how much that decision divided the county politically until just recently, until this last election, because it just seemed like a no-brainer to me. Now, you're about to go into that school as a teacher. What are your thoughts about the community's reaction to the construction of that school?
Well, I can tell you that the part of the community that has children at Bennett Middle
They're
are
all for
very
it.
happy.
Right.
I can tell you that the staff that works in the current Bennett Middle is very happy.
Yeah.
You know, I've been teaching, it's hard to believe in the year 2015, I've been teaching for 38 years. I've never worked in a building that's air conditioned. I think most
Wow.
of us walk around, our cars are air conditioned, our homes are air conditioned, you go into businesses, they're air conditioned. It gets pretty stuffy over there, especially with middle school kids who, you know,
Moving around.
are moving around
Right.
and, you know, they're getting to that
They're all
young
panting.
adolescent stage, and it does get challenging at 99, 100 degrees sometimes. And of course, the board allows students to stay home once it does reach a certain temperature. The staff doesn't, but the students
But it's
still.
just wrong.
It is wrong.
Yeah.
And it was really a package deal. You know, I mean, the whole project over there was a new Bennett Senior and a new Bennett Middle package. So they can make use of land. And I think what the general public doesn't understand is the state really mandates a lot of things in school construction.
Right.
They don't take it lightly because it is a lot of money.
Right.
So, you know, it has to be green, it has to be efficient, it has to meet certain technology standards, and because they also realize it's going to change. So they're going to try to make it more advanced than it probably needs to be currently just to keep up with the advancements that go. And obviously, as a teacher, we're all excited about going to the new school for being able to teach in an entirely different way.
It's not
So
like
why
there's
the
like
controversy in the community?
right. It's not like there's
I'm
a
not
giant,
sure.
great teachers' lounge over there that you guys are going to have. You know, great facilities. You're still going to be doing your jobs, but just in a better environment for you and for your kids.
Without a doubt. Well, it's actually going to be the same kids and the same teachers for the most part.
Right.
But we all know that, you know, living in a home that's very small, with one outlet and no air conditioning makes it much more difficult than living in a spatial home with a lot of technology and a lot of opportunities to do things with air conditioning and sufficient heat. Heat is another issue.
Right.
So, I mean, I understand where the public may say, we got a perfectly good building there. Well, once again, the county doesn't take it lightly. They research things. How much does it take to build a new one? How much does it take to renovate an old one? And what I think the public has a hard time understanding is there's not much difference between the two. You know, is $1 million? It's a lot of money in my household, $1 million. In
Right.
the scheme of things, it's not quite that much when you're talking about a brand new building, as opposed to renovating an older building that's still going to be old
Right.
and aging as it goes.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure why. I think it comes down to people not seeing the whole big picture
Right.
of why it's important to the community.
Right.
I mean, you and I know that if you want to draw business and jobs into a community, and you want those jobs to be high-tech jobs, high-paying jobs, when you're bringing in engineers, architects, those kinds of professions, the first thing out of their mouth is, how's the school system?
Right.
How are the schools?
Could teachers do a better job of being good ambassadors for the school system, maybe?
I think what they do every day is a great way to be a good ambassador. I, as president of the Wacomico County Education Association, I wish I could get more of them out to be a little more vocal at county budget hearings or county council meetings, or possibly any input sessions the county might have on education. I think I have struck a pretty good relationship with the county council. There are several people on there that the Education Association endorsed. We're nonpartisan.
Right.
You know, we basically look at people's
Right.
stance on education, whether they're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian. If we feel they have the students, parents, and education in their hearts, and that's something they're going to pursue, you know, we're all about supporting their effort. But it's one of my goals to get teachers a little more vocal in what's going on, to try and get a little more of the facts and the truth out there to the public.
Right.
Because I think, you know, social media is good, but it can be divisive.
Right.
I'm all about having media that brings people together and say, let's talk about this, have input, because the Board of Education, our schools, is such an integral part of our community. If we don't have that as a civil discussion,
Right.
not a them against us discussion,
Right.
I don't think that them against us discussion benefits either side. There's too much of that already in our country in general. You know, I miss the days of when let's all get together, talk about it, come up with the best possibility.
Right.
And I think Wacomico County has to come to that discussion of what kind of school system do we want, how does it affect our daily lives, how much money are we going to put into it, and why we should support it and come together.
Right. I like to talk a lot about paradigm shifts because I went through one. And certainly as a reporter and as an editor, every day I dealt with the negative aspects of the school system. Just that's what reporters do. They have to reflect that. And usually where there's like the smoke, that's where we go to get news. And as a young person covering it as a product of the school system, I have to admit I was pretty negative about stuff. But then I had kids that went into the school system, and I got to see those teachers and see what they were up against. And I sat there at the table every night and did homework and was very involved in the stuff. I went to all the plays and the chorals, and I had a whole different feeling about the school system. And I used to think negatively about the school system, and after actually being a participant in it, I felt like it was a pretty good school system, that these teachers really cared and were really trying. How can people get the same experience that I had?
Well,
how can we transmit that somehow?
That's a great question, and that's a great idea. I do think that's an issue. I think, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I even find, you know, your teaching style changes after you have kids.
Right. Right.
When you're involved with children on your own personal
Right.
basis, you're exactly right. So that's something I can definitely bring up. I think it would be great to bring, you know, members of the community in to take a look at the school system and examine it. I think it's important to be upfront, transparent, and I do think there's a lot of good that's out there that doesn't get the coverage that you're speaking about, because in today's world it seems to be the drama.
Right.
Everybody will tune in to watch the drama. They may not tune in to see the kid get the spelling bee award,
Right.
or spell some gigantic word that I can't spell.
Right.
And that's
you're talking
society
about
in general.
Spelling bee. I mean, I used to cover the National Spelling Bee when I worked in Washington D.C. for a while, which was always fun.
Okay.
But because the whole time you're there, you don't want to be there. You don't want your kid to keep advancing.
Right.
So you're the only person in the audience that's rooting against your kid,
Right.
which is really awful. But when you go to those things, you're blown away by how smart the kids are. And with teachers, when I go to the Teacher of the Year banquet and I sit there, when I leave that thing, I feel so good about the county, the system, the teachers, because all the stories that are told that night, the heroic effort of all these teachers that are celebrated, it just blows me away.
I think you're exactly right. I had the privilege of attending the Teacher of the Year banquet this year also, and we'll be giving Kim some awards this year. She obviously deserves them. It's always tough choices. I wouldn't want to be on the committee that chooses the
Right.
Teacher of the Year, because there are so many great ones
This
out
is
there.
Kim McCleachy.
That's right.
Right, yeah, her husband's the coach over at Y-High.
Correct.
Right, okay, and she teaches, I forget
Uh,
what she teaches.
I think special ed,
Okay, exactly right. She's a
Right.
special ed teacher.
and which is very much a tough
Talk
job.
about a job.
A
That's
very
a job.
big job, and not a job probably when you were in Ireland school that even really existed that much.
Right.
The school system has changed so much, and it does take great teachers like him and others, because there's so many finalists and so many nominations from the community for Teacher of the Year. Our population in Salisbury is much more diverse. We have English language learners from 39, 40 or more different countries that have needs. We have all the special education needs and mandates that have to be met. And I have all the respect in the world for teachers that work every day with our special needs kids, because that is amazing. It's truly a calling there. It's one thing to be the band director. It's another thing to
Right.
deal with special needs kids, whatever their needs may be. So those are all kinds of things that, the community, once again, 50 years ago, the folks that are at meetings saying, why are we spending all this money? They don't know that those mandates and things have come in that cost so much money. You're almost
Right.
talking one-on-one,
Right,
not to make a pun
Right,
today, but
right.
one-on-one help, one teacher per child,
right.
which that teacher's still making the same salary as a teacher who's teaching 35 during the day, and probably working harder.
What can parents do to help teachers?
I think communication is the key.
Like, I email my kids' teachers all the time. I don't know if I'm a pest, but I love having that communication.
I don't think any teacher thinks when a parent is contacting them they are a pest by any means. In fact, it's refreshing. We have more things in place in today's world to communicate with parents than we've ever had in the history of schools in the United States, whether it's, like you said, email, cell phones, parent portal, where you can go on and look at your students' grades at any time you want.
Right.
And we still do it the old-fashioned way. We send paper progress reports home and paper report cards home, even though they can be checked online. We realize not everybody has that capability. I don't think there's any teacher in the world that when a parent calls, they won't sit down and meet with them. Just like any meeting, some are happy, some are sad.
Right.
But the goal is parents and teachers definitely have to talk, because it's all about the student being successful. And I think any teacher is more than willing to talk to a parent about making their student more successful. And I think they strive to do that.
Next week at Bennett Middle, you're having your final performance
Well, hopefully not my final performance.
in that building.
In that building, yeah. And really, that auditorium, I think when I started in 1977, the Bennett Auditorium was in its second year of existence. And it's been through 2 rehabs. And fortunately, I haven't been through 2 rehabs myself, but on Thursday night next week, yes, the last Bennett Middle School performance in that auditorium, as being a shared auditorium between two schools,
Right.
will be
Where the
performed.
sound bounces off of everything.
Well, I'm sure it'll be better than the cafeteria that I'll be,
Right.
what do they call it, a cafetorium,
Cafetorium.
that I will be using next year. But yes, it will be our final performance in the old Bennett Middle
Now,
School.
will there be tears or will there be good riddance? Let's get the heck out of here.
Well, I will tell you that the new band room at the new Bennett Middle School is absolutely beautiful.
Good.
I mean, it is just probably one of the most pretty rooms. The architect told me that was their favorite room. And
Wow, good.
I think it's actually bigger than the cafeteria. We have a pretty big band program at Bennett Middle, so it's needed. But I'm excited about going over there. I'm sure the kids are. I won't miss taking all the equipment from one school, dragging it across the parking lot after 38 years, and then bringing it back, which Bennett Senior will still have to do. But
Right.
It is nice that the band room and the stage and the new building are conjoined.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, when you spend that much of your life in one place, yeah, I think there's going to be some reminiscing going on there. And I think the great thing about it is the kids that are performing on stage Thursday night, I taught their parents, a lot of them in the
Wow.
audience, and I'm going to say this very quietly, as I realize this here, some of the grandparents.
Wow.
So it's been an interesting career.
Wow.
It's been a lot of fun. It has been very rewarding. I can be honest with you, a lot of times people come up to me that I taught my first and second year, and they go, "Mr. Hammer, how are you?" And I'm struggling for that name, because now instead of being 17 years old, they're in their late 40s or so. But it's always a pleasure. And like you said, they're like, "I'll never forget,
Yeah.
Mr. Hammer, when you just did this or we did that, and how much of an impact that had on my life, and what a great time I had." And that's what you need to hear. And there's been a lot of people that preceded me. Mel Harris was at Bennett Middle, for years. Charlie Smith was at Bennett Senior. I think
Right.
I came in to Bennett Senior maybe the second or third band director after Charlie.
Wow.
So that's a good thing about teaching in the same place and in the same community for so many years, because you get to know so many great people. And I tell my principal, who is wonderful, I said, "I just want to remind you as we sit down and have this discussion," and she often comes to me and asks me my opinion on things, "You've been alive just one more year longer than I've been teaching." And I actually teach with a lot of my former students, and a lot of the principals in the county are former students, and I look at that as a great advantage.
Yeah.
They know me, I know them, they know I'm kind of no-nonsense, honest kind of guy. So I love that aspect. I think when teachers change communities, you don't get that. And unfortunately, with the turnover rate in a lot of communities with teachers, it's hard to get that. It's kind of one of those things I'm not so sure teachers starting today are going to make that 30, 40-year mark.
Yeah.
It's a passion that can burn you out if you're not careful.
Yeah.
But people love it. I know the staff I work with, they love it. That's why they do it. It's too tough a job to do not to love it.
Gary, thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you, Greg. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. And hopefully, I will say, anybody who has any educational questions can feel free to call the Wacomico
Good.
County Education Association at any time.
We'll put your numbers up on the screen too.
That'll be great.
He's Gary Hammer. He's been taking care of your kids, trying to teach them music for 38 years. He would have failed trying to teach me music. I know that.
Maybe not. It's never too late, Greg.
But just another one of the great teachers in our great school system. And just want to give them a little bit of a forum here so people know what they're up against and what they do every day. Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper, your host right here on PAC 14.